Okay, you're good to go.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Teresa Gilliard-Cook. I am the Senior Instructional Designer in the Division of Extended Learning. My team and I are going to talk about today is regular and substantive interaction. This is a result of some better definitions of what online learning is as far as the Department of Education is concerned. So I'm just going to go right to move ahead. So the background is that the U.S. Department of Education issued some final rulings regarding these definitions. So they updated the definition of distance education and correspondence courses because they are two distinctly different things. The big thing is that it requires all distance education or online courses to include what they're calling regular and substantive interactions between instructors and students. One of the big things with this is can have implications of the Title IV funds, which is basically federal financial aid, as the Department of Ed has determined that the key element between distance ed and correspondence ed is this concept of regular and substantive interaction. So the U.S. Department of Education, in their final ruling, put out these 5 factors that distinguish these two types of education. So again, I mean, I could read this, but I think it might be more effective if you are able to read this. And again, you'll be able to see this later too, since it's being recorded. But the big thing is that they're looking at it from a way that there is interactions that are occurring in fully online courses that can be determined if somebody were to go into that course to just do a review, say an accreditor or federal regulators. So it just means that if somebody went in and looked at your course, they can see all these interactions with your students, maybe through discussion forums, through announcements, through a variety of different ways. And we can talk a little bit more about those as we move forward. So this chart was created by Russ Poulin at WCET, and he talked about what the previous interpretation is and what the current interpretation is. So this is really what you're able to see as far as how they've been able to better define. So for example, when they're talking about substantive, it used to be just of an academic nature. Well, that kept things very broad. But now when you look at it, they're saying substantive interaction engages students in teaching, learning, and assessment, and using at least 2 of the following items that are listed in here. So providing direct instruction, which there are questions to the Department of Education regarding what is that, how are they defining that? But providing feedback on student coursework, providing information, responding to questions, being active in group discussions, or other instructional activities approved by the institutions or programs accrediting agency. So you can see they've provided some more guidance to faculty and instructional designers and institutions. Regular interaction, so it used to be regular and somewhat substantive, and now again, it's been better defined what they mean by regular interaction. So you're providing these opportunities for students to interact. And again, the way I would look at that is interact student to student, student to instructor. And then monitoring the student's academic engagement and success, and ensuring an instructor is responsible for promptly and proactive engaging in substantive interaction with the student when needed, on the basis of such monitoring or by request of the student. So that's something that they've really, I think, better defined. So basically, they're encouraging faculty to reach out to the students that seem to be struggling, or maybe they haven't heard from in a week or 2 or 3, and just see where they're at, and see if there's a way to help support them, or saying, okay, here's what you need to do to get back on track. However an instructor would prefer to interact with their students in these situations. So What does this all mean? Even though RSI is a federal requirement, it's also a hallmark of effective teaching. And those of you that have worked with the instructional design team know a lot of these things we discuss with you. So this is a surprise. It's also, there are decades of research that have discussed teacher-student interactions and how they are an essential component of online learning. But I think the bigger thing is, especially those of you that have been teaching online, you're already doing a lot of this because so many of you have worked with us in the past. And these are the different things we do encourage you all to do. So one of the things I think is really helpful is to at least look at the characteristics of regular and substantive interaction. And these are the three of the hallmarks. They're initiated by the instructor, it's frequent and consistent, and focused on the course subject. So I'm going to go break down each piece of this. So what initiated by the instructor is you post a discussion question and actively facilitate the ensuing conversation. So these are the things, again, those of you that have worked with an instructional designer know that we encourage you to be part of that discussion. Do you need to respond to every post in there? Not necessarily. Is it good that you're in there and you know, if they're going off on a tangent, you bring them back. If you're seeing some discussion that perhaps is getting a little heated, how can you diffuse that? If you're seeing where students are struggling, or maybe a student is right on that precipice of like the proverbial light bulb going on over their head, those are the great places where you can interact. Think of it too in some of the ways you might do things in your face-to-face course. It's the same base principle, because in that situation you are truly facilitating those discussions and asking those questions. You know, you ask a student to visit you during your office hours or schedule a phone call or video conference, and you provide personalized comments for an individual student's assignment. This way, and you do it on a timely basis so that students have the opportunity to continue to grow within the content. You know, if you're not providing feedback until, you know, 3 weeks after, and they have something else or do that's kind of builds on that, it doesn't allow them to integrate what feedback you've provided and allow them to integrate that into the new assignment so that maybe they can improve their grade or understanding of the materials. And here again, it says what it's not. A student just happens to drop into office hours. You add something to the grade center, or a student submits a quiz that is automatically graded, because those are all things that happen without you as the instructor. So frequent and consistent. So again, this goes back to posting messages, announcements. Again, we've already talked about actively being engaged in your course discussions if you're doing those. You know, in some cases, maybe it's holding some kind of a review session. Required, I wouldn't use that word. I would say recommended, because again, one of the things that we've always said regarding fully online courses is that students are not required to be somewhere at a specific time. This is why we have particularly our adult students looking at online, because it allows them to be flexible with their time and do what they need to do and come to class when it's convenient for them. So again, it's not, you know, just sending that welcome message and a mid-semester message. It's not just encouraging students to participate in these, you know, optional sessions or optional activities. So focused on the course subject. So basically, maybe at the start of a module, you send a message in your announcements to your students, kind of helping them make those segues from what was in module 1, say, into module 2. And you're talking about what concepts you're going to cover. Yes, I took this from somewhere else where they're talking about post an example from last night's Mariners game in the course say in real world physics to discuss and illustrate the concept of coefficient of restitution. Yes, I found that elsewhere, but I think it's pretty explanatory in that it means, if you see something in current events that is applicable to what you're doing in your course, absolutely use that, because it helps them then see the relevance of what it is the work is in the course. Again, the different things, it's not reminding them of attendance policies, upcoming assignments. Again, going back to that original one, being so disappointed of an outcome of a game. So here are some suggestions for promoting regular and substantive interaction in online courses. You set clear expectations in the syllabus. And those of you that have worked with us, we encourage you to do that. We encourage you to set what you expect from your students, but we also encourage you to let your students know what they can expect from you. So for example, you expect them to, engage in the content, engage with you and their peers. You expect them to turn their work in on time. You expect them to be thoughtful and respectful in discussions, things like that. But the other side of the coin is that your students should know what to expect from you. So it could be something, for example, that setting the timelines of when they'll receive their feedback. So for example, for discussions, it could be, feedback, they would see feedback within, say, 3 days of the discussion being closed or the due date of the discussion. It could also be for larger assignments, they will get their feedback within, 7 to 8 days or something, being more specific so students know when to go look for that. And again, helping them utilize your feedback in improving in their subsequent assignments. Yes, sending course announcements and other messages at regular intervals throughout the semester. Again, these are things we encourage faculty to do, as far as, at the start of a module or end of a module, making those segues from one topic to the next. In providing maybe current events, again, we already said that, providing other not so much reminders, but encouragements to allow your students to feel like you're there. So this goes back to the whole concept of instructor presence. Providing timely and individualized feedback. Again, it does take time, but it takes time regardless of the modality. The big thing is that in order for your students to improve, they need to know what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. When you're facilitating discussions too, again, it's, but it's letting your students know how you will be facilitating those discussions. And maybe some discussions you'll be more, like I said, of a facilitator, but there may be some you are actively in there responding to every post because maybe it's an important concept that if they really aren't grasping it, it really impacts their ability to move forward. Conducting online review sessions, tutorials, office hours, or individuals' appointments. Again, review sessions, we would encourage you to go ahead and do them, but not make them mandatory and record them. Tutorials, yes, they're always helpful. Office hours, we encourage online faculty to either have regular office hours or individual appointments or both. Again, it's a way students have that opportunity to interact with you. I think this is a really important one, choosing tools and environments that make interactions easy and easy to document. Again, some of this goes back to having the pedagogy guide your use of tools. If the tool is going to really benefit your students as you are working through content, then yes, do it. But it's also thinking about these other pieces too. For example, interactions in external tools, such as those that are using things like Pearson's, McGraw-Hill, Cengage, doing interactions in there. So for example, doing what we would consider a discussion perhaps is not the place to do that because it is not easy to document. If for some reason an accreditor or the Department of Ed wanted to see those interactions, they would not be able to because they cannot get into those tools. So that's just an important component to think about as you are looking at ways to create those interactions with your, instructor to student, student to student, and student to content. We do encourage faculty to create midterm, short little surveys, maybe, a quick 2 to 3 question, open-ended little survey saying, how are things going, or what is it, name 3 things you like, 3 things you don't like, or something like that, just so you can get some feedback from your students. But then the bigger piece is taking that, looking at it and saying, okay, are there, based on the student feedback, and if you're seeing multiples of the same thing, is that something I can quickly implement now? Or is it something I can implement later? Or I can't, but at least telling your students, okay, I've looked at your feedback, I really appreciate it. Here are some things we can do. Here are some things I can do for another iteration of a course. And here is what I can't do. And if possible, the rationales as to why or why not. The other thing, and I know faculty are doing this now, is asking for feedback from their colleagues. So they're asking for their colleagues to be put into their courses, and their colleagues are able to provide them some base feedback on what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, or asking or allowing you, maybe you haven't taught as long as some of our other faculty, where you can ask and saying, hey, I run into this from time to time. How do you deal with this? Because in some cases, it has nothing to do with content. It just has to do with the modality. So moving forward, just so you're aware, ITC is currently drafting policy on regular and substantive interaction for SUNY Oswego. That was, Ramin had asked ITC to do that, and ITC is currently doing that. And we've drafted some very base ideas of what that will. We've gotten some feedback from Ramin, and hopefully in the next couple of months, we will have something to put out. And again, the instructional design team will continue to provide workshops on regular and substantive interaction during breakouts. If a division or department asks, we will be happy to go to one of their meetings and provide a broad overview like we're doing right now. We will, as we can over the next 18 months, create and maintain materials and resources pertaining to regular and substantive interaction. And as always, we'd be available for individual consultations to provide instructional design services as well as other instructional design support. So yeah, I know that was a lot of stuff. So if you have questions, we would be happy to see what we can answer. And if we don't have an answer, get an answer for you.
I just want to say thank you. And I'm thrilled that, I don't usually like bureaucracy and policies, but I like the fact that the Department of Ed is not allowing us to just pack it in and let Pearson and McGraw-Hill do all the work. I've been saying for years, if faculty can't add value, why do we need them? Be careful what you do, because you're going to put yourself out of a job. So, and as a former chair who used to like to go into online courses, and when certain faculty use, Cengage or Pearson, I couldn't get in and look. And so I think it's a good thing. Everyone else may not agree, but I think it's good. Otherwise, we're going to put ourselves out of work. So,
well, I know you and I have had these conversations, Sandy, and it is important that we look at it from the perspective of what brings value to our students. Setting it and forgetting it for an online course isn't always the best thing to do. Well, it is not the best thing to do because there is these preconceived notions from students that, oh, online is easier, which we know it is not. because many of us have experienced taking online courses. You can't set it and forget it, because then it brings no value to the students. Because if you're setting it and forgetting it, usually it's just a series of read this, take this quiz, and move on. And that's a matter of, well, okay, you're learning these concepts, but then what do you do with them? How do you apply them? So it's, in order for online to continue to be taken seriously, and again, as we know, our demographics are changing, we just need to keep up with that, and we need to really provide the value to our students. So other questions or comments? I know we don't have a big group here, so I wasn't sure if we would get any questions. Michael Starr, you have anything?
Just the one thing, just to be clear, you really seem to be saying in the online classes to stay away from email, because that's another one of those avenues that can't be seen or is hidden in the Blackboard space.
You're exactly right, Michael. And here's why. One of the things we do encourage faculty to do is to use course messages in a fully online course, because then it's all documented. Otherwise, if there is ever a question, and we always usually pose it in the idea that, if say there's a challenge to a grade, and for some reason we're asked to provide documentation to whoever needs it, if it's an email, then you're the one who's going to have to provide that, and you're going to have to scour your email. I mean, not everybody's great about organizing it and encouraging students to put certain things in the subject line to make it easier to filter and stuff like that. So in the case of that, yeah, it's easier. But also then in the case of accreditors or the DOE, if there are ever questions, again, it's easy enough to pull it out and say, no, this instructor is doing everything they're supposed to. Yes, they are, answering individual inquiries or larger inquiries or what have you. Again, it just provides another avenue, and an easier avenue in many cases, for those pieces to be easily seen. It doesn't mean you can't use email. It's just, it probably would be more difficult to be able to make the case that you are having those interactions with the students.
Michael, if I could just jump in, as a former department chair, I know it's sort of a cover your butt thing too. He said, she said, oh, well, I don't have an email from them that said that. And so it's hard because students don't want to use course message. And I know I don't like to check it on my phone. It doesn't work well. But it has saved us sometimes when it's like, hey, you agreed to do this and it's in the course message system. So I think it's really, I hate to say a contractual thing, but it's documented. And so somebody can't say they didn't see it.
I think that was a great question, Michael. Thank you. We do get that question a lot too. And that's why, again, when we work with faculty, we encourage them to use course messages. Yes, it's clunkier, but again, let's keep in mind that we do have a migration coming, and there are similar tools to course messages within Brightspace, but they seem to be cleaner and more intuitive and easier to use. And it's just encouraging your students too, by stating it in the faculty, all communications with me will be through course messages. And that again is something we encourage faculty to do, because again, there are those crazy things that happen, and it just makes everybody's life easier. It covers you, it covers your students. Other questions or concerns? Okay, well then, if there are no other questions at this time, I appreciate you all coming. If you have other concerns or questions, please feel free to reach out to the instructional design team. The easiest and fastest way to reach out to us is through the help desk at help@oswego.edu. You can ask your question right in there, or you can just ask for a consultation, and we're happy to assist you. And so we'll give you back almost 20 minutes of your day, or a half hour of your day, depending on how you're looking at it.